So, gonna show a couple of slides and then get into showing a live demo. So these are the current implementations we have working right now. Alaska is the latest add to the bunch, and since I was working on their data to help with the implementation, I used their data for the demo that we're going to be doing here. So thanks to the Alaska team for the data here. But those are the folks we're currently working with on these. First, a little bit of background, some history of how linear referencing has kind of progressed over the years. When automation first started coming up, the pavement guys would come up with some sort of thing. Maybe it was just a spreadsheet or something, but they needed a linear referencing system. So they decided, oh, here's how I'm going to name routes. Here's how I'm going to do measures. And then safety decides they need something. They come up with something. They decide, I need an LRS. This is how I'm going to name routes. Here's how I'm going to do measures. So you get some folks that use state cumulative routes where it's 0 at the state line, continue. Some folks where it's 0 at the county lines and changes. Some folks that like to put the route name into 4 different fields. Some folks like to have it all squeezed into one. You have all these different ones, and they're all different. And basically because they grew up separately, each of these folks were responsible for maintaining their own LRS and also their own linear assets locations. So anytime they made a change, they were responsible for making the change to both the LRS and their event data. More commonly that you find now is LRS has been centralized in the GIS group, but some of the older tools, all it would do is update the LRS. All that event data, it's up to each of these individuals group to do their own updates. And I usually call it integration by memo, where somebody sends a memo out saying, one of Randy Rowell's, little thing saying, here's what all I've changed to the route. It's up to you to go through, and because I added a mile at the front of the road, shift all your events a mile down the road. But what you get out of a tool like Roads and Highways is what I call a single source LRS, where you have one tool that manages the LRS and manages event locations for the entire organization, which is a big deal because to do like if you change the interchange and stuff, you may have 4 or 5 little edits, but that may affect thousands, tens of thousands of events once you look at the whole enterprise. And so those 4 or 5 edits, that's nothing. But if you have a tool that could do your thousands of edits automatically for you, that's a pretty big deal. And that's kind of what Roads and Highways does for you. And it does that not only for data that you store inside ArcGIS, it can do it for stuff outside, like AgileAssets. So you could have it for so however many external systems you might have, you can have it update your event locations all across the board. So the whole idea is in Roads and Highways, you may make a change. Say, here's your before alignment, and this is what the workshop guys just did a couple of minutes ago, and you realign it from. My cursor's not showing up there. You realign it from that to this. That's all you have to do there. You just save your changes. I'm trying to get my cursor back. Okay. And then on the AgileAssets side, here's your before, and the interface will automatically update it to this. And in this case, since we chopped out a piece of the road, you have one piece of event here, one piece of event here afterwards. And that's done for you automatically. So let me kind of escape out of this. Yeah, I'll show this to you live. Okay, change over this to duplicate so you can actually see what's going on my screen. Okay, cool. Okay, so here's a piece of Parks highway going through Denali Park in Alaska. And we start up roads and highways. And I tell it, I want to do a realignment in this case. So, let me turn on center line. And I say I want to draw in a new alignment for this. So I want it to go there. And so you're basically just drawing in what you want your new roadway to be. And I could say realign. And this temporality comes into this. So you can say, okay, this is going to be open to public. It was open to public on September 1st, or you can pick a date in the future, say it's open to public, whatever date it might be, and say it's this route I'm realigning. And it automatically knows, because of the center line I've selected, it says, okay, I'm going to cut a hole in my existing alignment from 120 to 127, and because this thing's a little bit shorter, where it was 127.78 to get to that point, now it's only 127.14. And so what that'll do is everything downstream, and this is kind of a big deal, it'll take that difference, 0.6 something, off of all the measures downstream for you as well. Yes. So. It's actually made up of a couple different pieces. Where's my Alaska guys? Oh, did they leave? Oh, there you go. I'm sorry. Maybe you can explain it. Won't let me do that while okay. So let me just stop editing, save my edits, and then I can answer your question a little bit better, Dave. Excuse me. Okay. Properties. It's made up of location, number, type qualifier, and there's lookups on some of those. So it's route location code. So the 114 means it's in the Parks Highway area. Numbers or route number type will tell you whether it's interstate or road or whatever. And then qualifiers, a counter they use for if like ramps and stuff. There's a whole bunch of ramps in the area and stuff. Okay, so that's all there is to doing the edit on the roads and highways side. Now let's run the interface. Okay, let me zoom into our area of interest here. Here's the before picture. I haven't run the interface. If you remember, I kind of cut across there with the new alignment. So this is the before picture. Let me open a new session. Okay, so go to Tools, Schedules, Roads and Highways, Interface, run the job. And there's a couple different pieces to this. The one it's on now, it's SEP 20. It's over here. It says the NetEXT refreshed before. What that's doing is for reporting purposes, it keeps a copy of the existing routes, existing events, so that you can kind of compare what all has changed. Right now it's running the step 30, which is the Roads and Highways interface. So now it's actually calling the web service to Roads and Highways. There's two web services. One's called Export Network that gets the LRS across. One called Relocate Events, which you feed it events and it feeds you back new locations. And then the rest of it's a bunch of QC. Then this part here, LRS Gateway, that's the part where, okay, we've gotten the data from Roads and Highways, we put it in these buffer tables, now we're going to flush it through and update your production system. So it's on that step now.
So Phil, I assume before presentation there's a configuration file what fields or route IDs?
I'll show you that in a second. And now it's done. Now, this is a very small data set, so usually it takes longer than this, but I was trying to get it short enough not to put folks to sleep. But at that point, it is done. And I think what did you have to do in the other one? You had to
Refresh the cache.
Is that what did it? I have to have my workshop guys give me instructions here to.
Bill, what we found is in situations like that, we just add the job step, automatically refresh the cache when it's done.
Okay. Oh, there it is. So there's our new shortened path through there. So you get a feel for, and you can see up here the event data where it sees things split into two, 112 to 115, now 117 to 120. So you get the pieces of it. So that's all there is to running the interface. Now, I did skip some steps. We didn't do any QC after we did the LRS. We didn't do any testing to see what the things would be before we ran the things. We have a test mode where we could do it, but that's the quick and dirty version of it. So let me change my thing back.
So in the Agile system, what did it do with the old piece? Did it retire it?
Yeah, one of the things you do with any event table, you can say, is it temporal or is it not? If you say it's temporal, it stores the other thing. If you don't, it just keeps the most current thing.
What version are you running in Agile there?
Agile is 7.1, Roads and Highways is 10.4.1, Oracle is 12. So this particular one I did about as new of everything as I can get. Yes, sir.
So once you went in and updated the LRS, it moved the assets down the road, and it shortened your overall length of that section.
Yes.
What we've dealt with in the past, when you shorten a section, if there was any pipes that was associated with a inspection outside them limits, it disappears. It don't show back up in your inspection tables. Does it automatically adjust all those previous years' inspections to pull it back in?
Sections are some a little bit separate from the LRS itself. Now, sections are linearly referenced, so their measures that associate the sections with the LRS, those would have changed. But basically, geographically, the sections would stay exactly the way they were.
Right.
Now, some people have a section generator job they like to run when the LRS changes. And so if that's the way you want it, different folks are doing different ways. I know North Carolina, Eric Perone's rewriting their section generator for them. But in general, but just straight out of the software, the sections are going to say geometrically where they're at, with the exception of when the road is no longer there, like our realignment.
Right.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, pretty much. Gives me a good idea anyway.
Okay. Okay. So the rest of this stuff is talking about some of the lessons learned that we've had from some of the implementations we've done. Okay. One of the big things is you're editing with events in mind. So you saw where we made a little LRS change here, and it changed our event data over here. That's kind of a big deal. I'm glad Dorothy's here. One of the things that you could do, depending on how you do it, you could do an edit in such a way where it does what you want it to with events, but you also, it's a kind of a double-edged sword. It could also do something you don't want it to do with events. So have an example here. This is a road, about a 9-mile road, and there was a realignment on the north end and on the south end, and all the 7 miles in between, which I've kind of gotten rid of, stayed exactly the way they were. Now, there's two ways you could do that realignment. One is to replace the entire route, and that's what this one, an unnamed customer tried on this thing. And if you think of this having event data on it, so what they did is they deleted the whole thing and they had a shape file that had the new alignment and they just replaced it. So what you're telling the software is, I just tore up 9 miles of pavement and put in 9 new miles of pavement. So what it did, what you're telling the software to do is delete all my event data on the entire route. That's probably a bad thing, right, Dorothy? Okay. just wanted to check. Now, the preferred way to do this is to do 2 realignments, one at the north end, one at the south end. And you did tear up the pavement there, put in new pavement. So it did retire the events on up here and down here, but everything in between stayed just the way it was, which is what you wanted. There was an example with Idaho, I remember, where there was a road that got realigned and there was a little thing going out to a water park. Do you remember the one I'm talking about? And what they did is they left this little piece of road out in front of the water park because the parking lot for the water park was there, but everything else changed. Well, what Randy in this case did is deleted the whole thing and put it back in. And we said, oh, that's not really what we wanted because they deleted all the events on that thing. So we had to go back to the drawing board and redo the edit the right way.
So is it going to have 2 different, I mean, there's 2 types of realignments. There's a realignment with retirement. There's a realignment with retirement, and then there's a realignment with, saying, rename the old, to old road instead of the current road. If it's, you rename it to old road, you want to keep all the events on the old road.
You can absolutely.
And it'll do both ways?
So what I would have done with that previous edit, I would have done a reassign of the old road from Parks Highway to Old Parks Highway, put in the realignment, and the order is kind of important. You want to do the reassign first to say this piece of road here is now Old Parks Highway, and then do the realign of the other part through there.
So rename it first and then realign it.
So one of the lessons learned, edit with your events in mind, because you're not just editing the LRS anymore, you're editing everybody's data. It's a double-edged sword. Like I said, 5 edits here could be 10,000 edits there. 5 good edits could be 10,000 good edits here. 5 bad edits here could be 10,000 bad edits there. So it does change your way of thinking. Yes, Michael.
You have temporal data so that if they do delete it, you can get it back?
Yeah, well, the first thing we have is we implemented, and actually we came up with this first with Idaho, this idea of a test mode run where you can say, okay, I filled up the buffer tables, what is it going to do to my data? And you can say, is this doing what I want it to do? And you haven't actually changed any production data at this point as yet. All you've done is you've let yourself see, and at that point you can go back to the other guys. Now, sometimes if you run that all the way through, you've changed data, and basically there's ways to recover it, but it's a bigger process at that point.
Right, but it has a temporality, so you haven't really totally lost it.
Yeah.
You do have the ability to go back.
So if you have temporality, and this is what we had to do a couple times in Idaho, is pull the old data out of that and re-import it. Next thing is there's different approaches. Rosa Highways has this concept of internal events or external events. Internal events are things that are handled right inside their software and in the ArcGIS thing, and external are things outside. The big difference to them from an end user standpoint is who decides when the edit changes the events. Internal events, the LRS editor, as soon as they save things, apply updates, it changes the events. With external events, the event owners, you guys, can decide where to go. And pretty much when we were architecting our interface, we got a pretty overwhelming thing from our users that they wanted control over when things changed. So we went the external events route. So that's one of the things that we learned. It does, and part of the reason is, if you're doing different scenarios, trying to figure out different ways to maybe optimize your pavement and stuff, before option 1 and option 2 that you're looking at, you don't want the LRS to change in between, so it might muddy your results. If you can say, okay, I'm running all my scenarios right now, let's wait till that's done, then update it. So most of my customers are talking about once a month, once a quarter. How often do you guys update?
It's usually about
Once a month. It's all right. Okay. So another big thing is proper quality control. There's a lot of things that, garbage in, garbage out type of thing, and it's very true in this particular case. And one of the things that it's kind of tough to do from just looking at it on a map is each of those maps is made of a lot of vertices. Those vertices have X, Y, and M coordinates on it. So it has measures. Those measures are invisible, and sometimes there's tools that both Esri has, we have some that can go through there and make sure it's not going. You kind of want it to be steadily increasing, 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, not going back to 0.2 after it got to 0.3 or not using. There's something called NANs, not a numbers, basically it's a null measure. There's all sorts of stuff, and if you have bad vertex measures, everything else that comes out of the software is not so good to what we get out of the web services. So those are the types of things that now there's a tool called Data Reviewer that's part of the ArcMap series that you can kind of set what type of checks you want to do, and based on that you can put some in there. And so my advice to you is one of those checks should be on your vertex quality. And then versioning is another big thing. Especially in a case where you may have multiple editors working at the same time. This lets each of the editors work kind of in their own environment and work separately, and then they can flush it to the next level of versions. And they can check their own data, but usually I recommend one more level so that editor one's edits don't necessarily overlap measures or something with editor two's measures and stuff. And once you get to that point, when you QC to everybody's data all together, then you can flush it to the default version, and that's the one the world sees, and that's the one the web services sees that does the interface. So you tend to be a little bit safer if you kind of go through a versioning level like that, and they've made it fairly simple to set up. So yeah. That's that one. So that's kind of some of the lessons learned. That's kind of a quick run through. The biggest thing, I'd say number one is probably the biggest thing, is be thinking as you're doing your LRS editors, as they're doing things, make sure they do it with events in mind, and you as a data owner, make sure that the edits they did don't do something to your data you don't want it to. And we have a lot of good tools and reports and things that kind of help you with making that evaluation. Any questions? Well, you guys are all experts now. Appreciate that, especially my workshop guys. I appreciate that.
Any questions? Come on, guys, get your LRS on. All right, we want to thank Phil Hardy. Oh,
Okay.
Stuart,
Yes, young man.
look out. Exactly.
So, Phil, you've worked with many clients now with their LRS, implementing first the network manager and now in roads and highways. What is one of the major problems you're consistently seeing with the agency's data and this getting this implemented,
Sure.
making it? What is the biggest problem?
I mean, one of the things I was just talking about earlier was the vertex quality, because it's invisible data to most folks, and we've been finding lots of errors in that. And at this point, we've gotten a lot of pretty clean data because we've given a lot of feedback, and things are looking pretty good. I got to give props to Alaska, though. I had this very intricate thing that QC's data. I've never seen a data set where I didn't find something wrong with it until now. The Alaska, You guys are absolutely
Yeah.
clean. Yeah, Virginia's close, but you know.
I do have a question, Phil.
Yeah.
Regarding vertexes and precision. Have you seen any issue? Roads and Highways has this odd habit of going down to like 9 decimals
Yeah.
for some stuff. So once you bring it in, how do you address that?
You know, actually, we were talking about this the other day. I haven't. It is a problem, and a lot of the DOTs have talked about. So what Dave's talking about is when you set the XY precision on the vertexes, it by default sets the measure precision, and that measure, you know, the X, Y's, M's on those things, it's 7 decimal places.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's more than. It's way more precise than anybody can actually be accurate. One of the things I was gonna propose, I wanted to ask Tom about this, Tom Brenneman. Okay, the calibration points, they're all in a table. You can use field calculator to say, change all those to the rounded version of it and apply the updates. And I'm thinking would kind of solve the problem, but I kind of wanted to double check, sanity check that with Tom to see if there's something I'm not thinking about. But it's an extra procedural step, but to me, I think that might solve a lot of problems.
That's not going to help the measures in the middle of the route, but it would ensure
Sure,
that
sure.
the measures at the ends of the route are rounded to 2 or 3 decimal places. 'Cause
Yeah,
It's not going to add decimal places. If you explicitly state a measure value, it will honor that, but it's going to use that to interpolate up and down the route. But if you put them at the end, at least you know when you ask for the measures for the entire route, it'll be 0.0 and 26.314.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Well, it solves one problem, but leaves another problem. One of the problems you always have is something will fall just off the end of the route because of the round off type of thing. It would solve that one. But you're right. If like when I was doing that realignment, I just picked a point here, picked a point there. Default, it was to 7 decimal places. But on the other hand, when I did that realignment, it put a calibration point at both of those things. So this would solve that, in that, you know, once you rounded those things, applied updates, the ends of the realignment would be at a rounded area. So, I think you're right. There's probably some complications that I really wanted to pick Tom's brain on this one to see if there's some stuff on there. Yes.
One more question, and I'll shut up. We've shown how a centerline editor can edit the data that's already in the system. But in Virginia, we also get centerlines from external sources, from VGen. And we would want to be able to import those automatically rather than to manually enter each one. Is there going to be, or is there a process in Esri Roads and Highways that'll allow us to import centerlines?
There's a load. So are you just talking about just the geometry or the whole routes?
I'm not sure, but let's just say whole routes.
There's a load routes command that's you can use to do. So if you have a brand new neighborhood or something, you can load that in with load routes. There's also the concept of cartographic realignments.
Yes.
If the thing that needs to be changed is just the geometry, but I don't know that there's a bulk loading of new geometry. Do you know, Gary?
Yeah, the load routes tool, as Phil mentioned, would be what you would use to load in the entirely new route. All of the route editing is done in ArcMap. So if you were getting new geometry from VGen, whether it was to be a real realignment, a cartographic realignment, an addition, you can use that geometry as part of the editing process because you're just going to pull it into
the snap thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it literally is it is the geometry that you could use for the edit.
Yeah.
So when you perform most edits you do something to draw or create geometry. In your case, you would be simply getting that from VGen.
But that's still a route by route.
So route by
thing,
route,
right?
that is not an electronic
Yeah.
load. That is,
Yeah.
I got new geometry. My route editors processed that geometry by touching it and incorporating it into
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the network using a roads and
Yeah,
highways
there's
function.
a pretty slick tool in ArcMap where you can trace, I think it's called, right?
Yeah, you don't even have to do trace. You literally can use that piece of geometry to be your edit.
Oh, in the center line. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you copy it into the center line.
Yeah.
Right.
So you saw me draw that center line in there.
I
So he's
got
just
in
saying
here about 10 minutes late.
Copy a new center line into it.
So that it still means we have to touch each one. There isn't
I think so. I believe that's correct, right, Gary?
So
Gary, come on up.
The only real batch capability is if it's a brand new road.
Yeah.
If
think
it
that's
is
right,
an edit to something that exists, like a realignment, even a realignment is not a brand new full road. It is an adjustment to something that exists. That needs to be processed by the editors. That's something that we have talked about adding into the capabilities to roads and highways, is to allow the edit functions to be called through an API. Right now, the roads and highways LRS editing functions are available in the user interface in ArcMap, and except for creating brand new routes, you have to use those LRS interface widgets to process the data.
Yeah.
So
And it is pretty important to do the editing through the roads and highways because it does this edit log, and that's what powers these web services. It remembers all the. So one of the things we tell it is every time you run the interface, we timestamp that, and so the next time we run it, we say, give us all the changes from the last time we ran it till now, and then the next time and stuff. And so that edit log has those timestamps of what all happened between those two dates. And so it's kind of important to do it through the software so that it gets, processed right. Anybody else? Oh, see him. I know this young man.
Yes. So, Phil, with all these new features of being able to visualize lat long and geometry and editing them on the fly and navigating based on them, do you think LRS is becoming less important and maybe we can just have another master location?
One of the things that has changed is, more of the folks doing data collection have GPS now and stuff, and they have coordinates, but a whole bunch of the types of analysis we do are based on measures. It's finest partition. It's all based on the measures and stuff, and it's overlying that. So,
are we going to that direction, like attaching those measurements into lat long or geometry? Instead of-
there are a lot of those things that could possibly be done by geometry. I think in a lot of cases it's better done by linear reference. But a lot of the stuff that's built into our software makes heavy use of that linear reference. So that there would be a pretty big rewrite of a whole bunch of pieces, I think, to make that. And in a lot of ways, the linear referencing is kind of the glue that takes all this data, your safety, your roadway characteristics, your pavement conditions, your AADT, all that stuff. That's the thing that they have in common, is it knows its route and measures, and it becomes relatively easy math to compare them together.
Just speaking theoretically, not considering the software.
Yeah.
Is it possible to use geometry or lat long as that glue?
As a matter of fact, a lot of the stuff that Roads and Highways does internally, as far as they have this snap idea, where you say if you reassign this route to a different name, well, the old event was right on top of it. How do I know what to go to? Oh, it's right under it, so I'm going to snap to it. So that uses geometry right there. So there's a lot of things you can do strictly with geometry, no doubt about it. You would know better than me if we're planning on changing directions in that area.
I do not think that anytime in the near future we're going to be able to do away with LRS.
think I saw Dave shaking his head.
Well,
back
I have a
there.
question, but to follow up with that, it would be like an address. I mean, you send somebody to this address, you wouldn't expect the average person to know what the lat long was or what the geometry was of this address.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like GPS and state plane. Both of those are related to each other, but you can do basically a conversion to it. And
Yeah.
of course, the feds, in all their wisdom, your HPMS is required to be submitted with your LRS, which requires your routes and your measures.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, everything about HPMS is linear referenced. Yeah.
Back to your example, Phil, where you actually split. You had the one segment, which was a certain distance, and you changed the alignment, which resulted in that middle segment getting retired.
Mm-hmm.
So did it go through? I assume it must have clipped that and then recalculated the geometry. That was probably one segment
Yeah.
with a geometry matrix, right, for the whole initial segment. So that turned that into two records
2 records, yes,
with its own geometry, correct?
each with its own geometry. Correct.
Okay. And the other you brought up with the roads and highways, which of course is pretty particular about the monotonic and non-monotonic routes duplication. We have, like a lot of DOTs, what we call a leave and re-enter, to where a road
call
a
what?
leave and re-enter, to where a
Oh, yeah,
road
the
actually
counties,
stops.
going in
It could
and
be
out
out of a county, and at that point there, I know it's treated a little different by DOTs, but we basically have the same log or measure at the leave as the re-enter. And now what we found is, contrary to some of the published information, the roads and highways will honor that as far as if it's a calibration point.
Okay.
My question is, will that cause any issues when we get ready to do some testing here with that network here with the Agile system?
I mean, personally, I consider it bad practice just because you have an ambiguous point. But I've never, we do have customers that do use zero gaps and stuff, and I've never seen a problem with it.
Okay.
You wouldn't know if you say at that point was measure 5, you don't know if that's this point or that point.
Okay.
So,
And I guess the other is when you actually did the update to the roads and highways, which is a roads and highways function, but then you basically imported that, more of a pull of the changes into the Agile system. You did the update with roads and highways.
Okay.
And then that service, you could update that 4, 5, or 6 times. Those changes won't be impacted in the Agile until you actually go in and run the utility to bring those changes in, correct?
until you run the interface.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That is that a configurable function now? What product is that? Is that part of the core, the actual utility within the Agile application?
Make sure I'm understanding the question.
You got
Okay.
into Agile and you had a tab, you pulled a tab down, and then you ran the process.
Yeah.
That is a product?
Yeah. That's the. I mean, you may know.
Right. Is a core product that comes with the application now?
Yeah, the system job that I ran.
I'm saying in your model there, you list a number of products here. You've got certain products here, then you have a core. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out,
Oh.
for us as an Agile customer, that when we upgrade to the appropriate version of it, that will be part of the product, correct?
It's,
That's a
it's
core?
called LRS Gateway is
Okay.
the overall product name, and it's kind of towards the bottom of that stack.
Okay.
Is it part of Agile Core, or is it part of Pavement Analyst or Structure and Grade?
It's a separate product. It's got a price tag on it. It's a separate product.
Separate product?
Yeah.
The LRS Gateway, are you talking about the
Yeah,
like
it's-
LRS Gateway? Or
Yeah.
it's running a system
Okay.
job? LRS Gateway is software, yeah.
Okay.
It's a kind of middleware, basically, type product.
But it's a separate product, it's not part of Core or Pavement Analyst?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I can't recall 100% though, but I know the chart you were showing, I thought that was at the bottom part as far as the core, but that's not the case.
No. I mean, it is towards the bottom, no doubt. It's foundational.
Okay.
You know.
The LRS, managing the LRS is not the same as the LRS Gateway, which is interfacing with somebody else's LRS. We have an internal linear ability to handle linear referencing system. You're talking about the integration between the two. That's a separate middleware system.
So there's a
It used to
basic,
be part of Network Manager actually, but now it's by itself, and we've used it in Virginia with the RNS currently. It's being used in Quebec, it's being used in other places.
okay.
Yeah, all of our LRS interfaces have very similar architecture. What we did with Idaho with Network Manager, we had a Network Manager product that's very similar to Roads and Highways that fed these buffers, and then we ran this LRS Gateway executable to the RS stuff. Roads and Highways, it does the editing, it feeds the buffers. We had the LRS Gateway, does that. With RNS at Virginia, we have stuff that feeds the buffers, and then the LRS Gateway executable does the rest of it. So same architecture throughout. Yes, please.
I think my question is the same as his might have been, and I don't still yet understand that
Okay.
system job that you went in and ran that actually updates the location data on the events from the updated LRS.
Yes.
Is that something that comes with, like if I'm in pavement, is that something that comes with my pavement product, that system job, or you have to customize that for me and there's a charge for that? Is that, I think that's what, is that what you were asking?
What I'm hearing is the LRS Gateway, or the LRS Interface, as we used to call it, is now a separate licensed.
It's a separate license thing.
And that will give me that system job that will update my
I mean,
events?
Joe's the expert on
Okay.
these type of
Two things
questions.
that I'm hearing. One is LRS Gateway is a separate licensed product. What? Mike. The LRS Gateway is a separate licensed product specifically designed to interface, for the interfacing of a different linear referencing system a state may have. The capability to run system jobs that are defined as a system foundation feature capability that is already part of the system foundation. There's no additional licensing for the ability to run system jobs.
Okay, that system job that you showed us that you ran, there were quite a few
The
jobs, but
particular-
somebody had to create that and set it all
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
Is that something you do for us as a customization, or?
It's part of the product. It's part of the,
So that'll be there.
The system
it's part of
job,
the LRS Gateway product that we're talking.
so part of what gets set up during LRS
Yeah.
Gateway is the system job that's
Yeah.
unique to running that interface. But the feature, the capabilities of having scheduled regular system jobs is part of the standard system foundation, yeah.
The maps that we saw actually as part of Pavement Analyst or whatever was up there, was that ArcGIS, Esri Roads and Highways, or was that still the current GIS functionality that's a part of?
I mean, I'm using 7.1, so I'm using the latest and greatest.
Okay, but that's the Agile Assets mapping capability.
Yes.
It's not ArcGIS. Okay.
They're getting a little bit.
Well, and that was going to be my next question. From a future standpoint, is Agile Assets going to keep the two separate, or in maybe 7.3 or 7.4, are we just going to see the mapping and GIS functionality just become an ArcGIS or Esri Roads and Highways?
No, I think they're going to stay separate. It's our own mapping and stuff. We're using some of their technology, but it's our own thing.
That's not quite true.
Okay, please.
The internal mapping in 7.2 will be ArcGIS server, and it will be all Esri Roads and Highways at that point. What we've done to date in 7.1 is we recreated a sliver of ArcGIS server to do what we needed to do. But it did it in the same way. So the functionality and the way it looks now is going to stay similar. It's just going to have a lot more functionality, and it's going to all be really based on ArcGIS server in 7.2.
What he said.
We're not planning to maintain two separate mapping
No,
engines.
we're not going to do two.
Okay, so 7.2 is going to be ArcGIS, and
Yes.
that will be the mapping capability.
That will be the mapping capability in Agile Assets in 7.2 going forward.
Okay, good.
All
This
right.
is 7.1 we're showing here.
Just think, Stuart, you kicked off that whole discussion. We had no questions here, and it all started with you. So we appreciate that because we definitely wanted to clear up some things. Definitely want to thank Phil Hardy, please. A round of applause. Thank you so much for taking your time and great presentation.